Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of Beckoning the Broncos. I'm your host, Kim Becker. We will wait till everybody gets to pop in here on all of our social channels. Almost time to get real. That's right, Mark. It is almost time. The time is here. There he is right there. Mark Hoynak, thanks so much for joining us this morning. He says, almost time to get real. Good morning, Broncos country. And it is exactly that time, you guys. It is the best time of year, right? I mean, I think that we probably all agree on that. And now that we have everybody in here, I'll intro this one more time. Welcome to Beckoning the Broncos. If it's your first time tuning in, I'm your host, Kim Becker. This is a part of the Mile High Huddle channel over at si.com. Fan Nation, appreciate you guys being here this morning. The time is now. This weekend is the last weekend before the regular season kicks off, and we really get a taste of what the 2022 Denver Broncos are going to produce out on that field. So a very exciting time indeed, a very anxious time. I know that we're probably all a little bit antsy, a little bit, nervous is probably a good word. I'm nervous. I was nervous before the third preseason game, just after that blowout to the Buffalo Bills. So, definitely kind of got us back on the horse right after that third game against the Minnesota Vikings and after we pulled out a dub there. So we sat 2-1 in the preseason for the Denver Broncos. Not too shabby, I mean, obviously that Buffalo Bills game was one that Nathaniel Hackett said that we want to put aside. We want to learn from that. We want to get better. And I think that's exactly what happened. So we can be excited about that. Want to welcome everybody that's in here, that's just popping in. Happy Wednesday. If you are listening to this live, this is the day after the initial roster cuts. So the Denver Broncos went from 80 to 53 just yesterday on Tuesday. And of course, the waiver wire was going on last night. We have Jamie in here saying good morning, Broncos country. Good morning, Jamie. Happy to have you here with us. Jeremy, good friend Jeremy. Hello. Thank you so much for being here, Jeremy. Ken, good morning, Kim. Good morning to all of you guys. Definitely a good morning. US Dave, that's a new name. Welcome, US Dave. Thanks so much for popping in here today. No team has been eliminated yet. Yes, best time of year. Isn't that the truth? Now, US Dave, I don't know if that means that you're a fan of all teams or if you are, just hoping that the Denver Broncos don't get eliminated. But no team has been eliminated. Indeed, we are at week 0 right here. We're in the thick of week 0. Of course, the initial roster cuts, like I said, were happening yesterday. So the initial 53-man roster has been revealed. I know that all of you, I'm sure, are well aware of what happened yesterday, of some surprising moves and then some moves to be expected. I think the surprising ones came for good reason. And that reason that, George Paton talked about in his press conference yesterday was that they just were at a logjam at a lot of these positions, which is not a bad thing to have. Of course, when you look at some of the people that were cut from the team or that were traded, it's hard. And that's something that George Paton really noted on. And I related to him so much when I was listening to his press conference yesterday, because he talked about how, yes, these are football players, they're tough guys, but on the inside, they're human beings. And this is their life. This is their job. They have to support their family. So to essentially, tell someone that you're fired after you've spent hours and days with these guys for the last few months, eating lunch with them, George Paton mentioned, and that's a huge one. I spend a lot of time around football players myself, and I get to eat lunch with them, and I get to spend a lot of personal quality time with them, and they're humans. And that's my favorite part about being a part of the football world. But it's really hard. And so George Paton did mention these are the 2 hardest days in all of the year when it comes to the NFL. And I completely agree with that. And I can relate to that so much. Coach Chris popping in here. Thank you so much for the support, Coach Chris. I think this is the first time I've seen your name here at Beckoning the Broncos. So thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome. Much appreciated as always. He says the only surprise with the DB cuts was Hinton. Yes. With some Kendall changes, Kendall, I'm already talking about him. With some changes coming, we should re-sign him. Denver Broncos for life. The Kendall Hinton cut was devastating to me. I mean, I did read, that they're probably hoping that he can be put back on to the practice squad today, right? Because the veterans don't have to go through the waivers. They just have to make sure that if they don't get picked up or if they don't get a better offer last night from another team, they can pop back onto the practice squad today with the Denver Broncos. So I'm sure that's what George Paton and Nathaniel Hackett were hoping there with Kendall Hinton. But what a sentimental cut that is, after that COVID year and after Kendall Hinton went in there and really just saved the game when there were no quarterbacks available and he just stepped up to the plate, and then to see him get cut. It's hard for us Broncos fans who have been through the roller coaster of emotions the last several years. So I completely agree with you, Coach Chris. I think that was a surprising move, especially because of what Kendall Hinton did produce in the preseason. He had a great game, earlier on there. I guess it was that first game and he made some moves there. He had a great reception. So he was stepping up to the plate. And as we know, all of the wide receivers had to step up to the plate after losing Tim Patrick. So it was no surprise that he stepped up, but definitely a surprise to see him cut. But I think that was just another position. That wide receiver position just had another log jam, just like that outside linebacker position where Malik Reed was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the Kendall Hinton one definitely was a surprise, and I think that's kind of across the board. I listened to a lot of different people speak about the Denver Broncos cuts yesterday and read a lot myself and just thought about it, and that was definitely the top surprise on my list. So I agree with you there, Coach Chris. Appreciate you coming in. I've got a hair literally in my eye, so that's really fun. But Jeremy says, I like that they kept Rip. Yes, so that was another surprise, right? I mean, we knew they had to get rid of one of the quarterbacks. It was either Josh Johnson or it was Brett Rippon. They kept Brett Rippon. Jeremy says, I like that they kept Rip. Henningsen and Virgil. Okay, we're going all three. I like that. Okay. Peyton and Hackett seems like they're really let the play do the talking and not preconceived notions. Yes, Jeremy, you are hitting all of my points, and I will get to both Josh Johnson and Malik Reed here in a second. But now that you bring that up, the fluidity of the process that Nathaniel Hackett and George Payton and the rest of the front office, all the scouts, everyone that goes into making this initial 53-man roster was so consistent. The fluidity was consistent. I don't know if I can say that, but I just did. Kind of makes sense to my head. Hopefully it makes sense in all of your guys' head. They really did not have any preconceived notions, which is really cool because they took what they saw in training camp. And then when going into that first preseason game, I'll just talk about the quarterback position here for a second. We knew that Josh Johnson was Russell Wilson's number one choice, right? We had read a lot about that. We had kind of read into some things that Russell Wilson said, meaning that he was really kind of taking Josh Johnson under his wing, and Josh Johnson was the most similar out of the two, out of Brett Rippon and Josh Johnson. Johnson was the most similar to Russell Wilson and his play. And I think that was important going into the preseason because it kind of gave all of us a confidence thinking, okay, if God forbid, knock on everything, anything happened to Russell Wilson, we could have Josh Johnson step in there and the rest of the offense would be able to adapt so easily because he had the same type of play as Russell Wilson. So I think that's what got in my head. That was a preconceived notion that I had, was knowing that Josh Johnson was so similar that we would be okay if, like I said, God forbid, anything were to happen to Russell Wilson. So that was kind of where my mindset was. I don't know if it's where your guys's were, but now seeing that Brett Rippon was really the one that stepped up in both the second and the third game, and that was what Nathaniel Hackett and George Payton really took into consideration. They didn't take that first opinion that we all had going into the preseason and just, throw Rippon out the window. No, Rippon didn't let that happen either. He knew he had to fight. So I really like that as well. It looks like, they're really making sure that all of these players get developed and that they're understanding how their development and how they're improving. And I think that that's really important. And I was really happy to see that, especially this year, just with all of the different coaching changes and whatnot. So I think that can give us a lot of confidence in the coaching staff and how they are evaluating film, how they're evaluating play, how they're taking everything into consideration. And they had not made this team before preseason started. So agree with you there, Jeremy. That was great. Gary popping in here. He says, good morning, Kim and Scott. Yes, Scott is here too. No one forget that. He's always here at Beckoning the Broncos every Wednesday morning with me behind the scenes. This would not happen without Scott, so we are forever grateful for him. Of course, you all know him very well. Hate the cuts, Gary says. Hate the cuts. I agree, Gary. Love that the season starts soon. Go Broncos. Let's ride. Yes, we hate the cuts. And again, George Payton mentioned in his press conference that these are the two worst days in the NFL. And it's very understandable. But we'll get back to some of the guys that were waived, that were traded. Malik Reed was another surprise, it looks like, for Denver Broncos country. I saw a lot of opinions about Malik Reed being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when you look at, his stats with the Denver Broncos specifically, he led the team the last couple of years in sacks. He had 15 sacks over his time with the Denver Broncos, which sounds like a lot, but then you look at the play scheme and what happened and the timing of those sacks, and he wasn't one to really step up right when that snap was taken to get on the edge and to go get, rush that quarterback. It was more of a sequence of events, it looks like, when some of those sacks happened. Of course, a great player. George Paton said such a great guy. And I just go back to knowing these guys on a personal level, that's got to be the hardest, because George Paton really emphasized what a great guy Malik Reed was. But again, he just said there was a logjam at that outside linebacker position, which should make us feel pretty good knowing that we've got some good depth there in the front of things, that if Malik Reed is traded somewhere else, that will still be okay. But, George Paton said they wanted to make sure that they found a good home for Malik Reed. And I think that was really important, just to show you the personability of him and his relationships with these players. And he was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Malik Reed in a 7th round pick in turn for a 6th round pick, I believe. I hope I don't have that backwards. For the Denver Broncos. So it is a new pick. And they got to make a cut out of that. So it's interesting. It's a business, and we all know that, but it's hard. It's hard to see hopefully that Malik Reed can have a new home and have somewhere where he can produce what he has been able to produce. And I think that's exactly what George Paton was saying. If we can't have him, hopefully someone else great can have him. And the Pittsburgh Steelers sounds like it was a great landing spot for him. So, we got to validate all of these cuts, all of these reasons as best as we can, especially this next day when it's all fresh. But come next week, we'll be talking about a very different situation. We'll be talking about week 1, but right now, just trying to validate some of these and make ourselves feel better. I'm trying to make me feel better anyways. I hope I'm making some of you feel better as well. I'll pop into the comments here a little bit, see what's going on over there. I know you guys have been chatting about this. Michael's over on Facebook. He says, I read that Broncos could bring back Josh Johnson on the practice squad. Yes, absolutely. Like we said, this was kind of a surprise because we assumed that he was Russell Wilson's guy. So we kind of just thought, a preconceived notion, if you will, like Jeremy was saying. Maybe we thought that he would be the guy, but Michael, you're right. He definitely could be back on the practice squad. We could see that as early as today. So definitely something that we can keep an eye out for there. And he's a veteran. He's been, on so many teams over the last decade or so. So we know that he's got experience with this. He knows how it works. He knows how it runs. And I'm sure he understands what happened and why this had to happen. And, God forbid we see either him or Brett Rippon out on the field this year, because that's not what we want. But of course, always need to have depth at every position, even the quarterback position. So yes, definitely could end up back on the practice squad as early as today. If you were listening to this live, Wednesday. If you're listening to it later, you probably already know if he's on the practice squad. So here we are. Chris Jenkins over on YouTube says, morning Broncos family, morning Kim and Scotty, wire time. Team not looking too bad. No, not at all. The team is not looking bad. I think it's fantastic to see. We have John over on YouTube as well. Says Montreal Washington reminds me a lot of Percy Harvin. Washington, yeah. So the whole, the wide receiver position there. Obviously, we know Montreal Washington will play a lot of special teams. But another logjam there that we had to make some moves at. And, it's funny because a few weeks ago we were singing a different tune when we found out that Tim Patrick had that season-ending injury. We were panicking, for lack of a better word. I was panicking. But, to see now that they had to get rid of a couple wide receivers and Brandon Johnson and, he's going to IR, but another logjam at the wide receiver position, even after we lost, one of our starting guys. So definitely the team is not looking too bad. Very, very excited to see what happens here in week 1 next week. My goodness. In less than 2 weeks, you guys, we will know if Russell Wilson was able to defeat his former team with his new Denver Broncos team. I mean, that's insane. I haven't even done a Beckoning the Broncos show in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks ago, the last time I was doing that's more time than looking forward to when we're going to be able to see who wins that first Monday Night Football game. That's crazy. Mind blown, if you will. Absolutely insane. We can talk a little bit about injured reserve because that's an interesting thing as well. George Paton touched on that. It was Greg Dulcich and who else was going on injured reserve? Now I'm blanking. Someone help me out here. Oh, Jamudia. That's right. Thank you. Ojemudia and Greg Dulcich are both going to go on injured reserve. The earliest that they can return is week 5, especially for Dulcich. I know they said he's definitely going to return for week 5. That's kind of the plan right now. He has to go on to IR, even because we knew he was probably going to make that initial 53-man roster. But if you go on IR, the earliest that you can return is week 5. And then Ojemudia will also be placed on IR. So waiving Eric Tomlinson, a tight end, Eric Tomlinson, and of course, defensive line Mike Purcell, waiving them both yesterday was probably a little bit of a surprise to some people, especially in Purcell, but they are able to pop back on to that roster today because of Dulcich and Ojemudia being put on short-term IR. So I think the phrase that George Paton used was they took one for the team, literally, because they just had to kind of take the afternoon off and then return back today, Wednesday, August 31st, because they will be putting Dulcich and Ojemudia on that short-term IR. So some interesting technicalities when it comes to a lot of the way that these waiver wires work. And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know them thoroughly 100%, but very interesting to hear some of that. I wish that we could have some more time with the front office and those scouts. Man, I wish I just knew what their week looked like. I work for a football team myself, and I see them come through, and I'm so intrigued by what they're doing and what they're looking at, and what they see in practice and whatnot. So it's a well-oiled machine with a lot of people involved for sure. So it was a crazy day for a lot of them. And of course, we know Sam Martin, punter, was also cut. I know there was some rumors in the beginning of the week that was due to some cap space, due to his salary. I saw there was an article that said he refused a salary cut, but then of course George Paton said in his press conference that was not the case at all. So not really sure what happened there. Pure speculation when it comes to Sam Martin, but they were excited about keeping Corliss Waitman because he's a lefty punter, which I always thought from the beginning of training camp, from really the offseason when we were discussing punters and special teams and what was going to happen with the Broncos when it came to the special teams unit. I always thought having a lefty punter was pretty cool because I think that they can do some really great things, some surprising things to other teams. It's hard to practice special teams if you don't have a lefty punter on your team, throughout the week when you're game planning. So to have that lefty punter will be interesting. That's something I'm going to keep my eye on this season to see if that made any difference when it comes to how they're setting up the next team. So an interesting move there. But again, George Paton also said Sam Martin's a great guy. It was nothing personal. It was just came down to the wire and that was that. So it was really interesting to listen to. I think it's one of those things, you have that initial panic when you see some of these names being cut. And then you hear George Paton talk about it and he's so calm, cool, and collected. He really is. And it seems like he really is so intelligent when it comes to this kind of stuff. He knows what he's doing. He has that sentimental side to him. You can see that he really does care about these guys emotionally and, mentally, and he wants the best for all of them, but he also knows first and foremost, this is a business. And I think he's doing a fantastic job with everything that's been happening. A rough year last year, even when he had to let go of Vic Fangio, we know that was hard for him because he did have high things to say about him as a person as well. So I think just he's showing a lot of consistency when it comes to intelligence and respect for the game and for everybody involved on the staff, both players, coaches, front office staff, support staff, everyone involved. So I just feel very comfortable with the people that are running this ship right now. And I hope you guys do too. I just think that after a few very rocky years, it's comforting to see that we've got people that are very confident in their decisions. And I know that bleeds down, as we've talked about here at Beckoning the Broncos, it bleeds down from the top into the players, onto what they put onto the field. And I think it's just really important to have the leadership qualities that both George Paton and Nathaniel Hackett have. Even looking back at week 3 at the game against the Minnesota Vikings, the Denver Broncos looked like they did in week 1 again, which is what we wanted to see after that second week against the Buffalo Bills. And Nathaniel Hackett came up after that game with the Bills and he said, that was bad. It came from me. He took accountability. The leadership was not great. I need to, rework what I'm saying, what I'm doing, because I thought we were in such a good position after training camp. And that was a big reality check. But then to see them bounce back in week 3 gave me a lot of confidence in Nathaniel Hackett and whatever he said to them inside of the 4 walls of the facility in pregame, because I think that is exactly what we needed to see. So, just a lot of thoughts going on here. Of course, tough couple of days when it comes to this 53-man roster. But again, I just think that hearing him say that it's a logjam at positions, at the outside linebacker position, at the wide receiver position, essentially even the punter position. I mean, I think that's great to hear because it should make all of us feel, take a deep breath about the depth that we've all been a little bit worried about. I know we didn't talk, there wasn't a whole lot of defensive line. I know that was some depth that we've been concerned about a little bit, but to hear that, the outside linebackers had some depth, at least that you've got kind of a good back front there going on. But Jeremy, I see that you're commenting over here on YouTube. Thank you so much. It says Peyton is being very safe and smart with his moves. Yes, exactly. Being very safe and smart, very confident, very thorough in his thinking. So completely agree. Jeremy also says the Martin thing was an agent framing the situation positively for his client. Hey, that's his job. So if that's the case, great. Again, just want to appreciate and thank you all for your support over here on all of our social media channels at Mile High Huddle. This is Beckoning the Broncos. I'm Kim Becker, if you have not popped in here before, but I really appreciate you all being here this morning. I know this is kind of our last weekend to really take whatever you need, relax, because once we pop into week 1, it is go, go, go every day. And that's exactly what we have all been waiting for. So it's going to be a very, very anticipated week next week. I know that you guys know this, but we have daily podcasts at Mile High Huddle. So make sure that you are liking and subscribing to everything. We've got some really great content coming out, some really great people on this staff that take a look at literally every single thread that goes into the Denver Broncos organization and analyzes a lot of things going on here. So really great group that we've got here at Mile High Huddle, and you guys make it that much better. And we just want to, send a huge thank you to you for bearing with us through the off season, through training camp, through preseason. And now it is literally go time, and it's going to be thrilling to see what happens with this team. We are all on pins and needles, of course, when it comes to that first Monday night game, but just want to really take a minute and appreciate you guys and just tell you how much I appreciate you. This has been a new journey for me. And so being able to come in here by myself and chat about my favorite team, the team I love so dear, that I have loved for my entire life, is a really special thing. And to be able to do it on a platform with a loyal fan base like you guys is incredible. And it's been a really great opportunity. So I just wanted to take a minute there, get sentimental myself. The 2 hardest days in the NFL, I might as well hop on board and also get a little emotional for you guys, because I just really appreciate you guys and appreciate you interacting with me and being here and supporting me. So thank you so much. Rick Lopez is over on YouTube. He says, morning Broncos country, what waiver claims are out there that can help the Broncos? Maybe right tackle. What do you guys think? Yeah, put that in the comments. Let's hear what you guys think. Right tackle. I mean, obviously that offensive line is one that we've always kind of been having our eyes on to see what's going to pan out for the season. I know there was a little bit of a competition there going on, but we've got some depth there. I think they're probably definitely looking at right tackle out on the waiver wire and looking what guys were cut yesterday to see out there in the league who might be available. And we'll be able to find that out really soon, which is so cool. So it looks like Leatherwood said that's an option right there for you. We've got Fallen Angels. Is that you over there saying Leatherwood? I think that, yeah, there we go. So definitely some options over there. And we'll be able to find out pretty soon. But right tackle is definitely one I'm sure that they are looking at. Oh, Michaela, thank you so much. You are awesome. I love seeing women in football. Thank you so much. I love being a woman in football. We are all women in football here that are on this channel right now that are chatting in the comments. We are all women in football, and we love it. And, I think we give the guys a pretty good run for their money. I will say that. But I love having the guys in here, too, to be able to chat with. So I just love everyone in football. It's so great seeing all of you guys, be so loyal, like I said, and pop in here. So just really, really grateful and thankful for all of you. It looks like Juan is over there on YouTube. He's got a personal question for me. He says, if you had the opportunity to interview Russell, what would you ask him? That is a great question. I think I would pray across all my limbs that I would be able to have more than one question to ask him, because to pick just one would be so difficult. But I honestly think it would be what is your morning and your evening routine, going right when you wake up and right before you go to bed, because to be in that mindset that he is in, I think is so disciplined, and you have to be so consistent, and to see the work that he puts in, but also knowing that he has a family to take care of, he's got other business adventures. He's so dedicated to what he does out on the field, but he has so much going on. And I don't know if you guys feel this way, but like I feel drowned in life sometimes. There's so much happening, and I am not even close to being on the caliber that he is. So I think I would just really ask what his morning routine is, what he does right when he wakes up, what sets him up for the day. And then before you go to bed, what puts him in the zone to fall asleep? Because I have problems with just like I lay down and I'm like, oh, hey, I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And my mind races and races. And then I'm like, oh no, if I fall asleep now, I'm only going to get 6 hours of sleep. If I fall asleep now, I'm only going to get 5 hours of sleep. And so I would be really curious how he just sets his mind right in the morning and at night. And I assume he probably does the exact same thing every day, just knowing the dedication that he has to his craft and knowing the work that he has put in. So that would probably be my first question. Tell me exactly what you do minute for minute when you wake up. What time does your alarm go off? What do you do before you go to work? And then at night, when you get home, what do you do? Because I would imagine it's just very consistent. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would imagine that it is. So very good question. Thank you so much, Juan. I appreciate that. But you guys, I think I'm going to pop off here. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Again, we had some cuts to talk about, some moves, but next week we will have some real game prep to talk about. I'm sure, of course, the week after will be the best one because we'll have an actual game to talk about, but excited nonetheless, and we'll be able to really dive into the game plan and see what's going on next Wednesday. So I appreciate all of you guys being here so much. Again, love seeing you every Wednesday morning. Thank you so much to being so loyal to Mile High Huddle. Make sure that you are liking and subscribing us on YouTube. We have daily podcasts in the morning, at night. I'm sure all of you know, but if there's anyone new in here, just make sure that you check them all out because it's great content coming at you from all angles, excuse me. So have a wonderful Wednesday. I will see you guys all right back here next Wednesday for another episode of Beckoning the Broncos. Love you all. Go Denver Broncos.